No.
What are we doing here?
We are starting a podcast. Why are we starting?
Why?
Yeah, why would we do this to ourselves? Doesn't everyone have a podcast? Maybe. Shut your mouth. So we started a podcast because I was laid off unexpectedly, which is obviously how you get laid off. And it sent me into a little bit of a midlife crisis. And we decided because I
still don't know that we are old enough to have midlife crises.
maybe I am an overachiever. This would not be incorrect.
Getting it done young.
That's not wrong. And so because I had a little free time on my hands, we decided that we would start this long dream of ours to do a podcast and just dive into
and
it.
if by dream you mean me going, when are we going to do something like this together? At what point we got to do something like this? What has it been 10 years of me begging for something to
we decided to
fruition?
finally follow Danielle's dream of starting
I can't
a
say a
podcast.
podcast was my dream, but something with you was my dream.
Yes, of doing something together. How would you introduce me to someone who doesn't know me, but I really want them to listen to my podcast? So specific.
Not specific at all.
Let's go there.
This is Emma. I would say, I was describing you to someone I met recently, and the way I described you is, you have been my best friend for a very long time. And I like to describe you as like my little friend since you're vertically less
challenged. I guess not
challenged. Vertically challenged, maybe. It's not really a challenge. But you are, and anytime I see that, like, spicy things, like feisty things come in small packages, that kind of, stuff, I'm always like, that's my Emma. But yeah, you're just fiery and smart as shit, and you are so kind and so thoughtful, but also you take no crap from anyone.
True.
And I just love that about you. I just love that you are so passionate about the things that you are passionate about the world and about equality, and I look up to you in a lot of those ways for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah.
What do you think, guys? Would you listen to that? I would.
God, I was selling you.
That sounds like somebody I want to know. We have a lot in common. How would I describe you? I continue to be, but was really taken aback when we first started being friends. And just as a short intro to our friendship, I was in the Peace Corps. I put out a Facebook notification for everyone that I was bored and I needed things to do and I would love pen pals. And of all of my friends, every single one of them, friends, family, whoever, Danielle, who I knew through someone else, is the one that answered the call. And I have always been surprised and pleasantly surprised by your vulnerability. I don't know if you know that about yourself. Maybe we don't like to think that we're vulnerable, but you get into these really vulnerable spaces easily and you navigate them very well. And it's a really heartfelt sort of quality that I think made me sort of fall in love with you, was this ability to be vulnerable with a total stranger. I guess I was your journal. I was like your diary. And it was easier to do it across the world. This is how people fall in love on online dating sites. So that, excuse me, has always been something that I've really admired in you. And you've brought that to parenting. You've brought it to step parenting. And so I would say I've always looked up to you when it came to how you decided to be parenting, how you decided to parent your child. We both had interesting experiences growing up, and you have been an example for me as I have my own child in all of these fun new stages of life. And so I would say you're an excellent mother. I've always looked up to you as one of those people who I want to be like. You have always been amazingly vulnerable in a way that kind of informed me about how to be vulnerable with people. You're incredibly smart and well-read. The amount of information in your brain is a little staggering sometimes, but it makes for great conversation. And excuse me. You're a great therapist, and I love your sense of humor. You always have a great puzzle whenever we meet, so that's good. Like there's always
I
something
will say,
surprising that you bring to the table, literally.
I'm just gonna acknowledge to be I'll model that vulnerable piece of like listening to you. Thank you for what you said. I've like I can feel the discomfort in my chest of like this is a lot of complimenting to swallow
Mm.
right now. But thank you very much. What are we gonna talk about? Why would people tune in to see us? What are we here for?
We are here to talk about life's big questions. They all say that. I know.
They do all say that, don't they?
They do all say that.
I I think that you and I bring something a little different though. I mean, I think you and I are willing to go into conversations and places that a lot of people don't know how to go into. And
Mhm.
I think that you and I have a safety together that not very many friendships have.
Mhm. It's very
And
true.
I will say, sneaky side intention, wanting to model that like loving, tender friendship.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. We're going to have a whole episode about that because I went into it with my husband the other day about how surprisingly intimate my friendships have started to be in my late 30s. And you're one of those main ones. And that I did not realize I didn't understand intimacy until I started experiencing those things with someone like you. Why would people listen to us? I think there's like an authenticity and like you're saying a knowledge of having friendship for 14 years. There's like an intimacy there.
Mhm.
There's no fear about sort of expressing or sharing or talking about the things that have happened to us if it's going to help somebody. And I think you and I, because we are ADHD, neurospicy, or whatever you want to call it, we sort of pick things apart to understand them. And we are very self aware. Like, maybe not self aware, but very self watching, like, very aware of what we're doing at all times and how we're doing it and how it reflects with our values and things like that. And
Yeah.
so I think we have a little leg up on other conversations because there's this like real wisdom that we've picked up along the way from having these intimate, authentic conversations with each other.
And, as we go through this, we are going to be very cautiously reading some bits and pieces from the letters that we shared 10 years ago when you were in the
Mhm.
Peace Corps. And I think, at least my intention with that is I have a few intentions, I guess. One is just the universal experience of people, and everybody's just trying to find happy in all the messy ways we
Sure.
try to do that. But also then how it feels to be in your late 30s and looking back at, mid late 20s version of yourself and seeing, what you wanted versus what you have now. And seeing how far we've come and being able to tie that into some of the things that we have learned, 10 years after these letters.
How many people get to do that? Like, people have
It's pretty
memories,
special.
right? Like,
Yeah.
people have memories of the things they did when they were 20. They kind of remember the things that happened to them. We have like a literal transcript of 3 years of our
Yeah.
lives.
That was the time of both of our lives where we were transitioning from, single, independent young women into figuring out like, do we want to be in relationship and how do we want to be in relationship? And ultimately, at the end of those 3 years, we had both found our person. So
Recently read back through them, and
yeah,
it took me a long time.
you read
Just
all of them?
another, I did. I read through all of them.
Oh boy.
I don't know what I was looking for. I found a lot. Um, I should note here that some of those letters were 45 pages long
Yeah,
because it
they
took so
were.
long for letters to come from Ghana, where I was in West Africa, that we would just keep writing, or Portland, where you were. We would just keep writing
Mhm.
until we got a new letter, and then we'd respond to the letter, and then we'd
Mhm.
send it off and start a new one. Um, it took me a long time, but there were moments where baby Emma and baby Danielle were doing things or asking for things or yearning for things. And just to be able to have this experience of seeing my younger self and like nurture her as I'm reading this because she's still in there somewhere, right? It's just a very unique experience to be able to sort of parent your younger self, soothe your younger self, watch your younger self from outside of that very stressful sometimes situation,
Yeah.
and see how far you've come. We are unique in that we've saved it. It is also a burned book, which
Yes,
means
it is.
only you and I and this podcast between friends can read those letters. And when we die, if we die first, the other person knows we immediately burn all of those letters because they will not see the light of day. And no one will be reading excerpts at my funeral.
Unless they pull them from the podcast.
Yes, unless it is a podcast clip that I have signed off on and
Be
read
true.
myself. Yes. Just
Yeah.
tell me for a second
What?
why we are qualified to talk about this, or rather, why you are qualified to talk about this, and I'm here for free advice.
You mean like my credentials?
Yeah.
Those.
That's not why I'm friends with her, by the way. It's just, sometimes I do like the free advice.
If I wasn't friends with you before I became like a fully licensed therapist, and then I don't know if I would believe you.
It's just
But
really convenient.
super fucking convenient. Also, we curse a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Sarcasm and curse
Oh,
words
yeah.
are here.
Yeah.
I've been in mental health, not as a therapist necessarily, but I have been in mental health for 17 years.
We've been friends for
And
14. So when you
we've been
started
friends for
writing me those
14.
letters, you were just starting
Yeah.
out in your career.
Yeah, I'd only been in mental health for 3 years. I can math. When I started writing you, and I was in a rough point in my career because I wasn't sure, like, am I going to continue this mental health stuff or am I going to go a different route? Not to ruin the end, but I continued in mental health. And so yeah, I
Spoiler
have
alert.
I've had my private practice for 9 years, which was a group practice for a while, but I realized my heart wasn't in that. So I recently, part of our doing this podcast is I recently chose to go back to private practice. And you got at the same time that you got laid off, it just sort of worked out that way.
I got laid off.
Yeah, sorry. And yeah, I at this point in my, I mean, I've worked with all the people. I've worked in other countries. I've studied in Italy, and I worked in the Kingdom of Bhutan, and I have worked in inpatient and residential and at-risk youth in home and run programs. But for the last 9 years, I have focused more, especially more recently, with just couples and sex and just relationships in general. I'm a certified sex therapist in addition to being a licensed professional counselor and a few other letters after my name. But I just love working with relationships and communication, and whether that's like relationship to sex, to self, to partner, to friends, to children. There's something really special in it for me, but very heavily influenced in Buddhism as well. So
You have lots of book recommendations as well. We're going to do a lot of book
so
recommendations, which are useful.
yeah, it's how I relate to this world.
We read a
You have
lot.
something going on. I have a book for that.
Yep.
I read
have a book
I
for
read a
that.
lot of books. And not, I mean, I read novels, but a lot of my books are nonfiction books about everything else about life and Buddhist books.
Who do you think will like our podcast?
Oh,
Not that we want to box ourselves in, but if someone's watching this and they're like, I don't know, who do you think would like our podcast?
people in relationships.
I feel like if you're a mom, if you're a husband or a wife, if you're in a partnership, if you're friends with someone and you're struggling with your friendship because all relationships are hard, if you have trauma in your childhood for any given reason, we have lots of trauma in our childhoods for many, many reasons we will discuss. If you like books, if you like jokes, if you like random Broadway references,
If you like free therapist advice,
if you like free advice, free
not
really
to
good
be
advice.
confused with actual, like, this is not going to be therapy and this will not substitute for therapy or medical advice in
No.
any way. Disclaimer over. But yeah,
Disclaimer.
I mean, certainly I think we'd be open to hearing other people's questions too, and like how would you deal with this,
Yeah.
it will always be a dream of mine to be a Dear Abby. Like I would
Yeah.
love to do that at some point. It's in my career. I also just want to put out there that this is a safe space for all peoples.
We'll just say we're vulnerable. How about that? We just talk about it all. The ugly, the insecure, the weird, the lighthearted. We're going to talk about it all.
So that's us. And we're going to be trying to put out podcasts every couple of weeks. Would love to hear any questions or comments. And we hope you'll join us. We're glad you're here.
Yeah, we're glad you're here. And we want you to follow us on all of our things. So if you like TikTok, because you're an elder millennial or older who feels very young in your heart, like I do, we are at Postmarked Podcast. And on Facebook, you can find us at Postmarked Space Podcast. And we are working on an Instagram that'll be up soon. And I believe our YouTube is just at Postmarked Podcast as well. So you can find us on all of those socials and anywhere you feel like streaming your podcast.
And any questions or any other pieces you have for us, you're welcome to send us an email at postmarkedpodcast@gmail.com.
See, this is why I have her around. She remembers the things that I forget.
That's what we're here for. You complete me.
Okay, love you. Bye.
Bye.